In 1202, Genghis Khan lined up every captured Tatar man and boy next to a wooden wagon pin. Anyone taller than 3 feet was beheaded on the spot. Babies were the only males left alive. Why? A poisoning that happened when Genghis was still a child, and the Tatars were just the warm-up for what came next. To understand how a man becomes capable of ordering something like that, you have to go back to a freezing night on the Mongolian steppe, around 1171. A 9-year-old boy named Temujin had just watched his entire world fall apart. His father, Yasuge, had been poisoned by a group of Tatars during what was supposed to be a friendly meal. They sat with him, they ate with him, and they slipped poison into his food while he trusted them. Yasuge managed to ride home before the poison finished him off. He died in front of his family. And what happened next was almost worse. The tribe that Yasuge had led took one look at his widow and young children and decided they were not worth protecting. They abandoned Temujin, his mother Hoelun, and his siblings in the middle of the Mongolian wilderness, with no food, no shelter, and no allies. A mother and her small children, left to die in one of the harshest climates on the planet. Hoelun kept them alive by digging up roots and catching fish in the rivers. Temujin grew up hungry, cold, and consumed by one single thought. The Tatars did this, and one day he would make them pay for it. That day took 20 years to arrive, but when it came, it was catastrophic. By 1202, Temujin had clawed his way from an abandoned child to the leader of a growing Mongol confederation. He had built alliances, defeated rival clans, and earned a reputation as someone who never forgot a betrayal. And now, with his ally Ong Khan riding beside him, he launched a full invasion of the Tatar homeland. The Mongol cavalry smashed through the Tatar defenses. Thousands of Tatars were captured. Men, women, children, entire families dragged out of their camps and forced to kneel in the dirt. And then Temujin gathered his closest advisors inside a single yurt and told them what was going to happen next. The ancient text called The Secret History of the Mongols recorded the conversation. Temujin told his clan that the Tatars had destroyed their ancestors, that vengeance was owed, and that every Tatar male would be measured against the linchpin of a wagon wheel. The pin stood about 90 centimeters off the ground, 3 feet. Anyone taller would be killed. Everyone. That meant every grown man, every teenage boy, every child old enough to walk on his own. The only survivors were infants still being carried by their mothers. In one single order, Temujin wiped out an entire generation of Tatar males. Fathers, sons, and future warriors, all gone. Nobody was left who could ever pick up a sword and fight back. And it almost went wrong. His half-brother Belgutai accidentally told the Tatar prisoners what was about to happen. Hundreds of them broke free and barricaded themselves on a hilltop, fighting with bare hands and rocks. The Mongols had to storm the position and kill every one of them in close combat. But the result was the same. The Tatar Confederation, once one of the dominant tribal groups on the entire Mongolian plateau, ceased to exist. Their men were dead. Their women were divided among Mongol households. Temujin himself married 2 Tatar women, Yasugen and Yesui, both daughters of a chieftain named Yeke-Cheren. Their father had been captured and executed. Their brothers were measured against that wagon pin and killed. And the 2 sisters became wives of the man who destroyed everything they had ever known. And this is where it gets worse, because that marriage was not love, it was strategy. Genghis Khan used marriage across his entire empire as a tool to end enemy bloodlines. He married his own daughters to the kings of allied and conquered nations. Then he sent those kings off to die in Mongol military campaigns. When the kings were killed in battle, his daughters inherited control of those kingdoms. The royal bloodlines of those kingdoms ended. Mongol control continued through his daughters. Marriage was just another weapon. But the Tatars were just a tribal group, a few thousand people on the open steppe. What happened when the Mongols turned this same approach against entire civilizations with millions of people and walled cities? The answer starts in 1209, in a place called Western Xia. Western Xia was a Buddhist kingdom, also called the Tangut Empire, in what is now northwestern China. About 3 million people lived there. They had their own written language, their own artistic traditions, their own royal bloodline stretching back nearly 2 centuries. They controlled sections of the Silk Road and had built a sophisticated civilization with libraries, temples, and a thriving trade economy. Genghis Khan invaded them, and the Tangut Emperor surrendered. For about a decade, Western Xia served as a loyal Mongol vassal, paying tribute and sending soldiers when asked. Things seemed stable. And then, in 1219, Genghis Khan asked the Tanguts to provide troops for his invasion of Central Asia. The Tanguts refused. One Tangut commander reportedly told the Mongol envoys that if Genghis did not have enough soldiers, he had no business calling himself a conqueror. Nobody talked to Genghis Khan like that and survived. But he had a war to fight first. He went west, destroyed the Khwarezmian Empire, and when he came back in 1225, he had one goal, and it was not conquest or tribute, it was total annihilation. The second Mongol invasion of Western Xia was nothing like the first. This time, there were no negotiations. There were no envoys offering terms. Cities that had been spared in previous campaigns were put to the sword without warning. The Mongol army burned every town, killed the livestock, destroyed the crops, poisoned the wells, and left nothing standing. It was not a war anymore. It was an extermination. In the Battle of the Yellow River in 1226, the Tanguts threw everything they had left into a last, desperate stand. An estimated 300,000 soldiers lined up along the frozen riverbanks, knowing this was the end. The Mongols smashed through their lines. When the fighting stopped, Mongol troops walked the battlefield and counted 300,000 Tangut bodies on the field. The entire Tangut military, an army that had held off invaders for nearly 200 years, was destroyed in a single battle. The capital city of Yinchuan was besieged and fell. Its population was massacred. The emperor was killed. Genghis Khan himself died during this campaign in 1227, but even his death did not slow the destruction down. His generals carried out his final order without hesitation. The result was the near-total erasure of the Tangut people. Their language died, their writing system vanished, their libraries were burned to ash. Historian John Mann later wrote that Western Xia is barely known today because Genghis Khan's policy called for their complete eradication. He described it as possibly the first recorded example of attempted genocide. 3 million people. An entire civilization with centuries of culture and knowledge, gone so completely that scholars did not even know they had existed until explorers found the ruins of their capital buried in the desert in the early 1900s. And the Mongols were just getting started. None of that compared to what happened next with the Khwarezmian Empire. This was the event that turned the Mongol war machine into the single most destructive force the world had ever seen. In 1218, the Mongol Empire made first contact with the Khwarezmian Empire, a wealthy Muslim kingdom controlling much of modern-day Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Iran, and Afghanistan. Genghis Khan wanted trade, not war. He sent a caravan of merchants to the Khwarezmian city of Otrar. The governor of Otrar, a man named Inalchuk, accused the merchants of being spies, stole their goods, and killed them all. Genghis Khan gave the Shah one chance. He sent envoys demanding justice. The Khwarezmian Shah Muhammad II responded by killing the lead Mongol diplomat and sending the remaining envoys home with their heads shaved. In Mongol culture, that was one of the worst insults imaginable. That single act of disrespect sealed the fate of millions. Genghis Khan gathered the largest Mongol army ever assembled, somewhere between 90,000 and 200,000 troops, and launched a total invasion. The Shah had made the fatal mistake of spreading his forces across dozens of garrison cities instead of concentrating them for one big fight. The Mongols picked those cities off one by one. And then the real horror began. Merv, known as the Queen of Cities, was one of the greatest cultural centers in the Muslim world. Its 10 libraries held an estimated 150,000 books. The great poet and astronomer Omar Khayyam had worked in its observatory. It had been a center of learning and trade for centuries, and the people who lived there believed their city was too important to destroy. They were wrong. When the city surrendered to Genghis Khan's youngest son, Tolui, in February 1221, Tolui promised to spare everyone if they gave up without a fight. The people of Merv agreed. They opened their gates. They laid down their weapons. And then Tolui broke every word of that promise. The entire population was marched out onto the open plains outside the city walls. 400 skilled workers and some young children were pulled aside and sent into slavery. Everyone else was divided among the Mongol soldiers for execution. The Persian historian Juvayni wrote that each soldier was assigned the killing of 300 to 400 people. A body count conducted over 13 days reached an estimated 700,000 dead. The historian Mustafi later wrote that Merv was still lying in ruins over 130 years after that day. The Queen of Cities became a ghost town, and it stayed that way for generations. And then it got even darker. Because next came Nishapur, and what happened there still haunts historians to this day. Nishapur was a major Silk Road city in what is now northeastern Iran. It was known for its turquoise mines, its bustling markets, and its tradition of scholarship. During the siege, Genghis Khan's son-in-law, Tokuchar, was killed in the fighting. The man had married one of Genghis Khan's daughters, which made him family, and killing a member of the Khan's family came with a price that defied imagination. In retaliation, Tolui ordered the destruction of every living thing inside the city walls: men, women, children. And according to Persian chroniclers, even the dogs and cats were hunted down and killed. Nothing with a heartbeat was supposed to survive. Tokuchar's widow, the Khan's own daughter, was reportedly brought to the ruins to personally watch the slaughter. The Mongol soldiers spent days going through the wreckage, pulling survivors from hiding places, from underground tunnels, from piles of rubble. Anyone found breathing was killed on the spot. When it was over, the Mongols built 3 separate pyramids from the severed heads: one for men, one for women, one for children. Medieval sources claimed over 1.7 million dead. Modern historians believe the actual toll was somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000, which is still an almost unthinkable amount of death for a single city. The Persian population as a whole may have dropped from roughly 2.5 million people to just 250,000 as a direct result of the Mongol invasions. That is a 90% collapse. Family lines that had existed for centuries, entire communities that had built and traded and worshipped in those cities for generations, they vanished in a matter of months, gone as completely as if they had never existed at all. But the Mongols were not finished, not by a long shot. In 1223, the Mongol army was rolling through what is now southern Russia when they defeated a combined force of Russian princes and Cuman warriors at the Battle of the Kalka River. The Russian army had outnumbered the Mongols going into the fight, but poor coordination and internal rivalries between the princes turned what should have been a defensible position into a disaster. The Mongol generals Jebe and Subutai exploited every crack in the Russian formation, using feigned retreats to draw the enemy into traps and then surrounding them on the open steppe. After the battle, the captured Russian generals and nobles were forced to lie flat on the ground. A heavy wooden gate was thrown on top of them. Tables and chairs were placed on the gate, and the Mongol commanders sat down to eat a victory feast, while Russian princes, including Mstislav of Kiev, one of the most respected rulers in the region, were slowly crushed to death underneath them. They ate and drank and celebrated, while living men died beneath their feet. This was deliberate, a message to every royal bloodline in the region. Surrender now, or we will do something to your family that people will talk about for 800 years. The Mongols had a strict rule about royal executions. They believed that spilling royal blood onto the ground was a terrible omen, so they found ways around it. The most common method was wrapping the person in a thick carpet or felt cloth and then trampling them with horses. No blood touched the earth. The spiritual law was satisfied. The person was just as dead. They used this same method on the last Abbasid Caliph of Baghdad in 1258. When Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis, laid siege to Baghdad, he brought with him one of the largest armies the Mongols had ever assembled. By some estimates, between 150,000 and 200,000 soldiers surrounded the city. The Caliph, a man named al-Mustasim, had been warned for months that the Mongols were coming. He did almost nothing to prepare. He sent just 20,000 cavalry to confront an army 10 times that size. The Mongols broke his cavalry on the first day, flooded their camp by smashing open the river dikes, and then surrounded the city itself. Baghdad fell on February 10, 1258, and what followed destroyed one of the greatest cities the world had ever built. The Mongols burned libraries, mosques, and hospitals. The famous House of Wisdom, which had preserved centuries of work in science, math, and philosophy, was destroyed forever. Later writers described the Tigris River running black with ink from burned books and red with the blood of the dead. Centuries of human knowledge gone in a single week of fire. Hulagu's own estimate placed the death toll at over 200,000. Some medieval accounts pushed that number to 800,000. The Caliph al-Mustazim was wrapped in a carpet and either trampled by horses or stomped to death by soldiers. His death ended a 500-year-old dynasty. The Abbasid bloodline, as a political force, was finished. State revenues in the region dropped to 1/10 of their pre-Mongol levels within decades. The intellectual capital of the entire Islamic world had been destroyed in a single week. Most historians consider the sack of Baghdad to be the moment the Islamic Golden Age ended. Everything that came after was built on a shattered foundation. What made the Mongols different from every other conqueror in history was not just how many people they killed. Plenty of empires have committed massacres. What set the Mongols apart was the cold, calculated system behind everything they did. They did not fight wars the way other armies fought wars. Other conquerors wanted territory, gold, or glory. The Mongols wanted something deeper. They wanted to make it biologically impossible for their enemies to ever recover. And destroying bloodlines was the key to that entire strategy. After conquering a city, they would sort the survivors into groups. Skilled workers, engineers, and doctors were absorbed into the Mongol system because they were useful. Young women were taken as wives or distributed among soldiers to be absorbed into Mongol households. And every fighting-age male and boy was killed. Not some, all of them. Without surviving men, there would be no future soldiers. Without soldiers, there would be no rebellion. And without rebellion, the Mongols stayed in charge forever. This was not the rage of a barbarian horde. This was strategy, calculated, repeatable, and terrifyingly effective. They used the measure against the linchpin method over and over. After each conquest, male captives stood next to a cart axle or wagon pin. Anyone taller was executed. A boy who stood 4 feet tall today would become a warrior in 5 years, so he had to go. It was bloodline destruction by mathematics. The total death count from the Mongol conquests is commonly estimated at 40 to 60 million people. The global population at that time was about 400 million. That means the Mongol Empire killed somewhere between 10 and 15% of every person alive on Earth. A study by the Carnegie Institution for Science found that so many people were killed during the Mongol conquests that forests grew back over abandoned farmland, removing an estimated 700 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere. The Mongols killed enough people to change the actual climate of the planet. And the final twist in all of this is almost too strange to believe. While Genghis Khan spent decades systematically wiping out enemy bloodlines across Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe, he was simultaneously spreading his own blood at a rate nobody in history has ever matched. Every conquered territory meant more wives, more concubines, and more children carrying his genes. His sons and grandsons continued the pattern for generations. A 2003 genetic study published by a team of international geneticists found that roughly 8% of men living in the former territory of the Mongol Empire, about 16 million men alive right now in this moment, carry Y chromosome markers that trace directly back to Genghis Khan himself. One man's bloodline spread across half of Asia, while every other bloodline around him was being systematically destroyed. He erased civilizations. He burned cities so completely that some remained in ruins for over a century. He ended royal dynasties with a rolled carpet and a horse's hoof. But his own blood? That survived everywhere. The Tatars are gone. The Tangut civilization is a footnote. The great libraries of Baghdad and Merv are ashes. And 800 years later, the DNA of the man who destroyed them all runs through the veins of